Back in February of 2018, Warhorse Studio released Kingdom Come Deliverance, a hardcore medieval life simulation where you play as Henry, a man lost in the chaos of his family's death on the quest to retrieve his father's sword and make the ones that took it pay with their lives. And it was received incredibly well, selling nearly 3 million copies now, and for a first IP for a studio, that's pretty much unheard of. But with success comes many other things. DLCs, a sequel maybe, or in this case, a TV show. Variety posted a Warhorse Studio exclusive article revealing that in the works is a new live-action movie or TV show that could be based in the world of Kingdom Come Deliverance. I know, I couldn't believe our luck either. You see, movies based on games used to have a reputation in the past for being, well, terrible. But since the success of the Witcher TV show, yes, I know that was more based on the books, but it has given people more of a different outlook on TV shows based on video games. No longer are video games based movies a laughing stock. Now they're something that is actually sought over, especially when set in a historical context. Which seems to, let's be honest, be a genre that is now kind of making a bit of a comeback these days. Okay, look, I know it says TV show in the title of this video, but really so far as we know there's so little information on the topic, and it was only announced last night, so that nothing else has really come out. So it's mostly speculations, but this could be a movie as well. Or they've said it's live action. Whether that will be a TV show or a movie, only time will tell. But I do feel for this sort of story-driven product, which at the end of the day, they're going to have to go the story-driven direction to keep in line with the game, it would probably work best as a TV show. Episodes fleshing out the characters and planning out the plot as you would, especially for, let's be honest, well, Kingdom Come Deliverance did very well in the historical gaming genre. It's still not as widely known and it hasn't quite reached the mainstream yet. I think perhaps putting it as a movie and just plastering Kingdom Come Deliverance over it, most people would be like, sorry, what's this? But if you have it as a TV show, gradually introduce people into the world with the people around it and gradually make people realize what this is all about, I think it's going to have much more success than if they just blast it out as a big movie to start with. He could follow Henry in medieval Bohemia, meeting new characters and reliving the works from the game. Or maybe not. You see, whilst there was news of it being based on Kingdom Come Deliverance, I'm not sure that following the actual story from the game is the best idea. I mean, the game is already incredibly plot-driven, a long linear story that follows certain characters with massive set pieces that looks into the life of a person throughout that period. And look, the game is basically a TV show that you play. The way that they do cinematics, the way that they do their storytelling, why would you just remake what is already basically that format? I honestly think it would be a waste of resources and time just to remake a story that's already so well told throughout the game. Instead, how about look at the other side, maybe a story based on the unknown characters or a completely new figure coming into the world. Yes, there can be crossovers, it can include people that we saw throughout the game. They would make incredible Easter eggs and cameos for the fans throughout, which, let's be honest, people use this buzzword fan service as if it's a bad thing, but fan service just means something for the fans, and having little bits here and there is not a bad thing at all. But with a game that is nothing but story like KCD, what is the point of just remaking it in live action? It could even be a completely different alternate reality maybe. Therefore some of the main characters could be used from the game, but there's no constraints and no risk of plot holes when compared to the game story because it's an alternate version of the game. But I don't know about you. I personally would much rather that it was a completely separate story with some new characters but set in the same time and area. Otherwise, I think it would just be a massive missed opportunity if they just went and explored the same things rather than looking into a story that hasn't been done yet. It's important to note, however, the article does state that this is a live-action makeover. Now, that could just be some nonchalant wording, but for me, makeover more indicates that it will be a direct version of Kingdom Come Deliverance storyline just made into live action in a show, which, as I said, I'm not the biggest fan of, but that could just be me looking too much into the word makeover. But what does this actually mean when we get down to it, for Kingdom Come Deliverance and the gaming community in general? Well, first of all, it shows the massive success the game really was, the want for more, the more content where this game was set and the characters throughout it, and hopefully it means more content for the future of Warhorse themselves. We all know that they were acquired by THQ Nordic, giving them more resources and more options to go to bigger places than the original game. And this TV show, as far as we know, could just as well coincide with a sequel to Kingdom Come, to be made alongside the game and have characters and storylines that somewhat interweave between. Of course, the challenge with this is to create two different mediums in a way that they're fully formed on their own, but if you choose to consume them both at the same time through the game and the show, they can only add value. Because of course, if they make it where all the characters always are interweaving between the show and the game, people are going to get confused. A lot of people that just consume the show will be like, who are these people? And vice versa. Making it interweave and making them add additional value rather than taking away would be the challenge, but it is definitely possible. But what does this mean for the wider community in general? Well, I did mention at the start of the video how the genre of historical epics is well on its way back up. Because let's be honest, it did take a bit of a dive. What do I mean by this? Well, the late 90s and the early 2000s were awash with historical epics. Gladiator, Alexander, Troy, 300, Rome, the TV series, the list goes on and on. When you look back at it, it amazes me how much was there and how much I think people probably took it for granted then, because we don't really have that anymore. Because as time went on, people just stopped making them. I don't know if the demand just wasn't as big from the audiences, or just the big Hollywood studios didn't feel the need to make them. But these epics would span across brilliant moments of history with gigantic figures and vast battles. But then fantasy took over. Superhero movies became the new big thing, and whilst yes, we still get snippets and looks into the historical eras with things like Centurion or Rise of an Empire or Exodus and so on, let's be honest, they're nothing like anything that we had before. They aren't even close to the scale and majesty of what people like Ridley Scott brought to us in the days of past. But is that making a turnaround? Because it seems to me that the latter years of the decade, historical epics are something that people miss. I mean, there's always been a fan base for them, but now it's becoming back to the mainstream. You have the Netflix Outlaw King or The King. Those were really big movies when they came out. I mean, in gaming, Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord was the biggest release on Steam when it came out in 2020. Total War is still, whilst not the most popular with its older fans, it's still growing as a franchise and it's bigger than ever. And yes, while swaying to more fantasy stuff than historical, they're still keeping it in there to some extent. And I think now is the perfect time for a historical epic on TV and film to make a comeback in a massive way. Now, there's very little we actually know about the live-action Kingdom Come Deliverance things. We know that it's being picked up not by Netflix, but ex-workers of Netflix, so they know what they're doing. I imagine it's not going to be made by Warhorse Studios themselves. I doubt the actors from the game will be any part of the TV show or the movie when it is eventually made. I think it's probably going to be completely separate, just using the license that Warhorse Studios came up with and the characters that they have trademarked. But nonetheless, this is incredibly exciting news. I can't wait until we get more information about it. And if you ask me personally, I would rather this was a TV show, exploring the characters and looking into them more, or even introducing new characters, but just giving that deeper aspect to it rather than a film that has a set constrained time where they have to tell these stories. I do think for character pieces and more intricate storylines, TV shows are definitely the way forward. But what do you think? Would you rather it was a movie or would you rather it was a TV show? Do you want the actors from the games to come back into the movie or TV show? And do you think that historical epics are truly making a comeback? Make sure you leave your comments down below, and of course, as always, I'll be looking at them all and try to respond to as many as possible. But I will bring as many updates as I can as soon as we hear from these guys about the Kingdom Come Deliverance live action show. But until then, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.